So before answering directly your question, Abdul Jalil, I'd like to know a bit who do we have in the room. So if you guys can introduce
Yeah.
yourselves like for like a few seconds and what you expect to get from this session.
All right. So could we do that, please, guys? Or we can start with anyone.
Okay, I will, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you, and pleased to meet you. I'm actually responsible for an Italian NGO of social promotion located in Abruzzo, center part of Italy. It's called Arci, doesn't matter. Recently, we started to work a lot in rural areas in which are located nature reserves or in general protected areas. And of course, one part of our job, especially with young people and the local stakeholder, is how to develop social enterprise to support community and youth development. As you know, nature reserves or protected area very often are looked as limited opportunities areas. And we want to upside down the concept. We want to show that through protected area, instead, it's possible to develop different kind of opportunities for young people, including economical one, in order to keep them in the community and work with the community. So my interest for this workshop was exactly to fresh ideas, new concept, something that can be useful for the job that we are doing on field. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Grazie mille.
Okay, so anyone want to come like after Mario?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay, good, Kautar.
So hello everyone, my name is Kautar. I am working at the High Atlas Foundation. I'm a project coordinator. We're an American organization based in Morocco. We are working with Moroccan communities in order to start their own projects, either by like starting their projects as cooperatives or as like farmers, because we provide like trees, fruit trees that later on can be a source of income. We also work on renewable energies projects, water projects, legal aid, women empowerment. So like a lot of projects. And what I wanted from this workshop is to get the idea of social entrepreneurship, since we are working on it, and also like get introduced to other aspects that I might not be like introduced to before. So anything can be helpful actually. Thank you so much.
All right. So before we pass to the next one, please, I'm just want to inform you that we are recording the session. So if there anyone like who's not comfortable with that, they can just turn their camera off. So like if there anyone who wanna like wanna go after Kautar.
Hi.
Yeah, sure.
My name is Joseph Connery. I'm coming to you from Ireland, the north of Ireland. And I'm currently a freelance mentor working with young people who have disengaged, using design and entrepreneurship to help re-engage them on a platform involving the Sustainable Development Goals and global education, to try and offer a bigger picture on there's a big world out there as opposed to their own wee bubbles in their own environment. So I use those as platforms of re-engagement, and they offer a natural project-based learning opportunity on a global scale. And the challenge is to see the relevance locally and how they can impact globally. So that's what I'm currently doing. I have a big emphasis on social enterprise, and I have an interventor framework, and one of the personas would be innovation. And we're looking at innovators, innovation inventors, even looking at actors and philosophers as well. And then design and entrepreneurship would be the core personas of that platform. So that's me.
And would you have something that you'd like to talk about in this session?
Sorry?
Is there something you would like? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking, is there something you'd like to talk about or focus on this session?
On this session, I'm curious about the innovation aspect to it, affecting the social enterprise ethos. So looking for additional ideas and what other people are doing in respect to innovation.
All right. Okay.
Hi, guys. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sonam. I come from Armenia and I am currently working in the field of curriculum development and on non-formal education programs, focusing on majoring on business entrepreneurship and startups and design thinking. Right now, we are working towards implementing our program in the rural areas of Armenia and for rural communities, for teenagers mainly, from 12 to 17 years old. And my main concern with this seminar is to diversify whatever methods and I guess techniques I can find and learn from you guys, because I think there are a lot of very nice opportunities here to help children and teenagers from the rural areas to realize their ideas and to understand that you don't need to move into a bigger city or to a more, I guess, modern city to realize whatever you have in terms of your ideas and your goals and your passions, I mean. So that's me, and that's what I usually expect. Thanks.
I think Adrian is left, so I don't know if he can hear us.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for the opportunity for this event. My name is Adrian George, and I represent the social enterprise called Academy of Strategic Knowledge, which is based in London. The main activities that we had before the pandemic were to organize international events, international training courses, especially financed by the European Union. You know, maybe the Erasmus Plus program. And our main focus was on youth workers, youth leaders, local authorities or universities, teachers, and the main field was social entrepreneurship, let's say leadership, international cooperation, non-formal education. And now, because of the pandemic and all the travel restrictions, we stopped the activity. We kind of moved online. And the reason for me for participating on this event is like to take new initiatives, new ideas, new tools, let's say maybe, and to develop new partnerships and new projects.
I think everyone
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I think everyone. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. I think it's very insightful. I think based on the audience, we have two types of needs. There's one about this whole idea of inclusion, whether it's rural areas, youth at risk or special needs, or areas that have a special status like protection areas or conservation zones. And then the second part is kind of insights and learnings on approaches. So just, of course, like one thing in life is always to manage expectations and to understand what we can and we cannot do. And to link this with the context that Abdul has framed at the beginning. So my personal background is I've been involved in this kind of journey of social entrepreneurship for the last decade. And so in many countries, but mostly in North Africa. So I've had a chance to work with teenagers from 14 to 18 and university students from 18 to 25 and then others. And what I can say basically as a disclaimer is that social entrepreneurship is not the holy grail to create jobs and improve inclusion or to make sure that people will stay in their homes. That's definitely the case. or social entrepreneurship, and I know there's a few experts in the room, is basically how to design products and services that answer a specific and social need. And that is something that people should really, really, really pay attention to. And the second thing is that a lot of people think that to answer poverty, you can involve and be involved in social economy, and then creating projects and programs for that. So and it's very important to understand that basically, if you want to design a product that works, that can generate income, that can create types of value and revenue, it has to be market driven. So which means in the context of a friend from Abruzzo in Italy, like what are the products and services that the people can produce and design that have a market? So social entrepreneurship is market based. And if this pandemic has to taught us all something, is that we have to become a more resilient and agile society than before. So it's really how to really make sure that people are designing products and services that answering a demand and answering a need. So the process to how to get there is what's kind of tricky. So if you're talking about university students, or talking about high school students, or talking about youth at risk or youth workers, so the process of understanding that you have to test and prototype first, and to understand what type of market that you want to do. And at the same time, understanding that the community might be the one at risk, which means the one that you want to improve or to develop in terms of inclusivity, or maybe the community that you want to serve as products and services. So these are two different approaches. So you can be either a social enterprise if you develop products and service for someone, or if the community itself needs new types of livelihoods. So it's very hard to, without having context and details about where your projects are operating, it's very hard to give you kind of tips on what would be the best product that can be designed. But basically, if I may offer an advice, you have to be cautious on market needs, and not to raise expectations. So definitely not go into the villages and the towns and telling people that social entrepreneurship is going to create jobs for you, and then voila, this is how it works. But really developing a resilient mindset, which means people to have to learn how to prototype, to learn how to test, and to learn how to create some type of value. So I'd like to really have this disclaimer first and foremost, because that's I've seen a lot of projects not being able to grow because of this lack of understanding. A second disclaimer is on this whole emphasis on innovation. So innovation is a buzzword. You can innovate with a product, you can innovate in a process, you can innovate in a service, and so on and so forth. But the key is how are you going to provide the best need for the best answer, or sorry, for the need that you can have detected at the right time. So the needs based has to be forward looking and forward thinking. So if you're talking about conservation, okay, so what is the business model that needs to happen to make it work? And risks or pandemics or whatsoever, these are already parts of life. And we've seen over the years, the last year, that a lot of social enterprises were more resilient than traditional businesses because it's always based on an essential need. So it's not just something that is extra, a leisure or whatever. The third idea is that when you want to understand the project, you have to make sure that you put yourself in a context to design based on whatever the audience is there, not instead of the audience. And that's a key stakeholders and key takeaway in everywhere. So if you want to work with kids in high schools, the expectations is on skills, not on jobs, because they're not going to expect a 14-year-old to create on job right away, but they can do when they once they're 18 or so on and so forth. So it's very important to understand that when you talk about entrepreneurship, it's first and foremost a mindset, and that everybody can create their own jobs? Not necessarily. We need a lot of profiles. So it's very important to understand the diversity that you have in these profiles and make sure that you design programs that go and fit the needs. So I'd like really to open up a conversation on this kind of three statements I made. And if you have more, I would say something you'd like to challenge, discuss, or go deeper in some of these elements, because I'd like to be more as more specific and pragmatic as possible.
Okay. Hey, Adnane,
Sure.
I like what you said about entrepreneurship being a mindset, because I believe also it's an attitude, approach, and a philosophy, and doesn't necessarily have to be involved with the business. It's something you can use in your life. You can, for example, look at things and say, right, I can change it, or it doesn't need change, or look at something else. So I agree with you entirely that it is a mindset, and it won't solve things overnight, but it's a pathway that some people will take. Some people will take the business entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur, or even the entrepreneur model as well.
And I think it's more important when you deal with other people as a youth worker or as an activist, that you have to convey that to have different pathways to reach a target. But it's more important to understand the do's and the don'ts at the beginning so that you pave a way and that you don't raise expectations on yourself and on surroundings, because it's really important to understand that like entrepreneurship is a marathon. It's a long journey, and resilience is something that is being built. It's like muscle, day by day. Any other comments, questions, people?
Okay, Sona.
Yeah, when you said it is about skills and not jobs, I totally agree with you, because working with children, the first thing that you need to do is to tap into their potential and try to enhance whatever they have before building something new with them. Because I think everyone knows that it's really hard to unlearn something, and we should just work with whatever the children have before starting to build something new. So yeah, I'm totally.
And and to add on this, so if you have a project with kids, it has to be fast, which means if you run a program, it should not be a year-long program, which means
Sure.
in 2 months
Hmm.
or 1 month, if you want to learn them, to teach them problem solving, or if you want to teach them business models, you can do that in 1 month and get them really on the field as fast as possible, because they have their muscles are still, I would say, adequate enough to be able to learn these tricks. Because if they learned at 14 or 15 that they can do a prototype, they can make an income, and they can learn something, it's going to make the growth stage for them and their projects much easier. So my advice really in that case is, don't think of it as a school. Like we have like an hours and curricula and so on, and then wait for like 6 months for people to do something. No, give them you have to gamify. And I loved when you said, Sona, about
Yes.
project-based learning. So you have to make it project-based and gamified, which means uh, in 1 month they have to come up with a project and they have to sell anything, because that's how you're going to learn and unlearn some of the mindsets that they should not have, they would need to improve later on in life.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have an unfair advantage. A lot of young people I work with are categorized as neat, who have disengaged, but they're actually naturally entrepreneurial. From a survival point of view, they would buy and sell. It mightn't always be legitimate, but you have the core characteristic of an entrepreneur, and sometimes they don't even realize just how naturally entrepreneurial they are. That's a great advantage, something to build on.
Well,
Yeah.
and I definitely agree with you, Joseph. Like I personally don't like to use the term neat, or don't like to use the term vulnerable, because if you tell the person you are a vulnerable person or a neat or disenfranchised, you are going to create a wall that is going to disempower them. And that the trick is to understand their needs and to make them unlock their own potential. And this is where the entrepreneurial vibes and spirit, as you mentioned, Joseph, is going to be unlocked. But it's really like, please don't have posters where you say, if you're a youth at risk, come to our program. Or if you are in need, come. Because I tend to see that in a lot of government programs, in a lot of EU funded programs and so on. And they put these big posters and like with the pictures of a person, and they write up like a text that is actually disempowering. So you have to invite people in. So when you invite them, this is where you can give them the pill, in a positive sense, which means like sharing a meal, breaking bread, and then going with them into a journey from being decentralized to entrepreneurs. Anybody else? Any comments, questions, something you'd like to, or something that you struggle with currently that we can chat about?
I think like now we've been talking about like the problems in solving the problem, which is good. We're talking about how like to understand the community's needs and how to like to react with that. But can we like go through like what comes next? I mean, of course, like after you do this, you either wanna reach more like audience or reach more people. So to evolve in general. So is there like and also like one other thing in how like for example the skills of the entrepreneurs, like is there any specific skills that that entrepreneur should or must have in order to evolve that business or to make it grow, like or to reach more audience? Because like now first, yes, like you need to understand the community's needs and to adapt a solution for them, but then after like you would like to expand and reach more audience, like how can you get to do that? And is there any specific skills for the entrepreneurs to have so it might help them do so?
Well, there's no magic skill. There's no magic recipe. And this is again very context based because in some cultures, the word scale doesn't exist in the language. It's not there. And you would understand exactly what I mean, actually. So the biggest challenges, like scale does not always mean big. It can mean deep, it can mean broad. It has a lot of dimensions. But the main challenge that I see and I've seen over the years of many entrepreneurs in various parts of the world is the lack of vision and how to be able to put yourself in the future and how to design. The second thing, if I mention a skill, I would say a muscle is resilience because things don't happen overnight. Building a project, building a company, building an organization takes sweat, blood, tears, passion, angriness, and fear. So, and if you're working with young people, please don't make it as a pinky life. It's not pink. It's actually very dark because it's not just about being responsible for yourself, but being responsible for the whole lot of people. So there's no magic recipe. And in a lot of contexts, like speed is the name of the game. Because a lot of places, if you have a sense of comfort, you're not going to move up. And that's very, very, very important. So resilience, forward looking, speed. There's a quote I heard a couple of years ago which says, think faster than you think. Because when you enable your brain to be able to think, and here I'm not saying don't analyze, but paralyze comes at cost. So you have to be forward looking. So push yourself to do something and practice what you preach. You cannot talk about social entrepreneurship and so on, and if you don't embody it in what you do. You don't talk about generating an ideas if you don't generate them. And it's really like about connecting also with different experiences, different folks and projects, and looking a bit at what happens across the board, and especially understanding the do's and don'ts. So in summary, there are no recipes. Everything's on Google, but the rest is all about practice. So how are you going to, if you serve 10 people, how are you going to serve a million? If a million scares you, means that I'll use Sonia's term, you have to unlearn your thinking process. The biggest barrier is your mindset. And again, your biggest skill and opportunity is a mindset that is proactive, that is forward looking, that always transforms from barriers to challenges, and that enables you in your community to always do more and be more. And that's something that you are really responsible about it. It is not your environment because you can shape how the environment around you is there. And that's something that I think if you are aware of it, you have a responsibility towards your community, towards your people to be able to grow more. Don't content with low level. Always be and try to embody more so that you can reach and grow more.
All right. So I don't know if like any of you guys have like any question like concerning that. Otherwise, I would like to ask you about something which called like concerning
Your group,
metrics.
this group is very quiet. Guys, please don't be shy.
Yeah, sure. And we will have like Q&A sessions. So I mean, if we can like go through the Q&A right now, like we can expand the session. Is we're gonna like take the benefit of the whole hour. Otherwise, we're gonna have like a 10 minutes of Q&A questions. So like I don't know about you, but Adnan, I want to ask you I've read a book concerning like it's called like the Lean Startup, and there is one term called the vanity metrics. The vanity metrics are metrics that you take, for example, the wrong metrics. You think they are like helping you understand the growth of your business, but they're not actually. You can maybe you're having a false numbers. Maybe they are growing, but the business is not growing like at the same time. So like in technology or maybe in application websites, etc., we can understand what could be those vanity metrics. They could be the number of people who are visiting the website. They could be the number of people who are maybe interested about the idea, but it's clear. But when it comes to the things, because we're talking about social entrepreneurship right now, we're talking about solving problems to a specific communities. Um, what do you think those vanity metric could be, or like could they be in any form, or like, or how do we know that we are not having the right metrics and we are going through vanity metrics, which means they might be good, those vanity metrics, but the business or the project is not doing very well.
Well, I think there was a quote from Einstein about that you cannot measure everything. And an excellent example is what we live in now these days, COVID. You have seen all types of KPIs, progression rate, transmission rates, death rates, infection rates, all of that. So sometimes some of these metrics create a hysteria where the danger is taking a concept out of context and trying to implement it. So I cannot answer a question as generic like this because it has to be relevant to your context in your project. Like if you have a healthcare business, the number of clicks on your business are irrelevant because the key metric is how many medical, I would say, contacts have you done, or what was the remission rate. If you are an e-commerce business, the number of people who have seen an ad on TV is irrelevant. But what is relevant is the cost per click. So it's very important to understand that the metrics have to marry your products and have to marry what you do. And this goes back by the first concept of understanding what you want to achieve, understanding the community needs, understanding your businesses. Or of course, there are some generic ones like turnover, revenue. If you are a commercial business, your impact metrics, and they depend also on the type of impact. But if you don't see a progression in your metrics and if you don't measure it, this is where something is wrong and you have to fix it ASAP. So so it's really like thinking about how to scale, how to understand your metrics and KPIs, and how relevant they should be on your content and in your context.
All right. Yes, Sona, please.
I think if you're interested in the variables that goes into measuring how much your work has impacted something, whether it's a business or a non-profit, I think you need to look up into impact measurement. And there are a lot of literature and a lot of sources on the internet. I think it will help you. Because when working with kids, you don't, and within the scope of a non-paid program, educational program, you can't really like grade them or I don't know, have any tangible results from them. So utilize this strategy of impact measurement by when we start the project, we work on our goals and objectives and try to like build a timeline, and that's how it usually goes. So if it helps, and impact measurement is a really great tool.
Sure.
But also impact measurement as a discipline, also it's like medicine. Like you have to kind of dig deeper into that. And so even when you do impact measurements, you should understand what type of tools are you going to use. Is it random control trials? Is it evidence-based? But it's like, if you have the expertise, go get the expertise, but you have to understand that you have to measure it from the beginning, understand what you need to measure and what you need to know.
May I?
Yes, sure.
I don't want to. Probably I misunderstood. I understood how we will go on. In the meaning, Adnan, you will tell us something more about that three statement you said at the beginning, or not? Yes, you will. So I will be short in the question, just to refer to one of them. At the beginning, you were mentioning market needs. You need to deal with the market. We are in a capitalistic society. You need to deal with the market. Market needs need to fit with your idea of social enterprise, for instance. But then I want to ask you how to solve the issue when your idea, I give you an example, a didactic factory inside a nature reserves specialized in onotherapy, okay? It's something that may be as a huge social need, but maybe at the level of market don't have same feedback. Now, how you can try to deal this social need with the market need, considering that if we only stay on the capitalistic rule, a lot of social need will not be investigated. And I can say to you, being Italian, that best capitalistic enterprise is a mafia. Okay, so I don't know if I'm clear in my question. Just for me to understand how you can deal these two different needs that sometimes don't crisscross at all. Okay, sorry.
So yeah, no, thank you, because I was and I made a statement. I was waiting for questions like this, really relevant to the question. So thank you a lot. So market needs doesn't mean capitalistic. That's number. A market need, which means something that you have a customer for. So for example, in the case of your center or of your industry, to understand who is going to be the consumer. Because if there is no consumer, if there is no visitor, you have no social enterprise. You have no visit. So the challenge is understanding who is your customer and why would they want to come and use or buy or whatever your product or service. Because what happens in many programs, and just last week I was with the MAVA Foundation on conservation, just talking exactly about this. Like you have a lot of, I would say, activists who would think that, oh, we have this type of resource and we just group people in a cooperative or something, and then people will come. This is not the case. People are not going to come. So you have to think about it on the separate sense, in the idea that, okay, I have a product or a service, a therapy or whatever. Who is going to be my target audience, and what should I do to bring this audience to me, not the other way around? Because whether we like it or not, markets are huge and competition is there. And of course, then I can add some more, I would say, added value, like it's impact driven, it's sustainable, it's ethical. But again, consumers first. This is what I mean by market need. That it has to focus on something from the consumer.
And then can you say something about impact?
What do you mean?
Impact of how you know, for example, your social enterprise is having an impact on your customers, on your users.
Okay. I'll give you an example of some of the projects I run, so that I can have a visibility. So we run a program in schools, in high schools. So we've been running this program for 7 to 8 years now. And this program focuses on how to empower high school students to identify problems inside schools and fix them themselves, right? So for this program, we have 3 impact metrics. Number 1, we have a number of skills, like we have 7 skills that we want our kids to develop at the end of the program. Number 2, we want parents to trust their kids in their day-to-day lives. And this starts because in some contexts, like parents decide a lot for their kids' future. And this starts just by example, if I go for a workshop, my parents are not going to ask me, where are you going? Things like this, as simple as that. And number 3, teachers. How teachers are using some of these methods, for example, design thinking or gamifications or so on, in traditional classes to make them less boring. So we do impact assessments on some of these items to understand how effective our models are. So our impact metrics are basically, now we can say it, with 40 euros, we can transform any 15-year-old kid, boy or girl, rural or urban, to develop 7 skills, which includes critical thinking, problem solving, effective leadership, and so on and so forth. So that's an example. Another example is that's easy. Like you support a young person to create a job. So here you would say, okay, so for the job, it's really how much income do they have, what type of contracts do they have. If you talk about healthcare, for example, we have a program in healthcare. So our KPI is how many patients have been treated by our doctors and what type of service the doctors have been given to the patients, and if the patients have felt it's different for them. So different programs, different types of impact, it's really important to understand where you go with that. Anyone, feel free to ask if there's anything else you'd like to talk to.
Yes, guys, do you have any other questions? Like, we have 5 minutes left. So if there are any questions that we can go through in these last 5 minutes.
Because before we were talking about tools.
Somehow the sound is not working. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
you. I can't hear you. One second.
All the rest are hearing me, yes?
Yes, yeah, like we can hear you, Mario. We can hear
okay,
you.
so
like, I think, yeah.
So if I may, because before you were talking about methods and tools that could be, let's say, innovative in terms of creating a vision. Do you have any advice which could be best path in terms of methods that will help, let's say, young people to develop and empower their vision?
I heard the last part of the question. You could repeat the first part. Sorry.
No, because you were talking before as one of the main challenges is a lack of vision. But also from our side, we were talking about tools, methods that could be helpful for young people or youth worker, for instance. So do you have any recommendation, any advice, which could be a good method to empower vision of youth worker, for instance?
So one thing I personally use is I use future-proof methods. And what do I mean by future-proof methods? Future-proof methods. So it's basically very simple. So if I'm in a workshop, I always ask people to project themselves 70 years, which is something beyond technically their lifetime. The purpose is just to get the brains to be wired and different. But when you design a program, you have to design it in mind that if one wants to create a project, you always give them a target or a challenge that you know is unrealistic for now. For example, can you remind me of the program you want to launch?
the social enterprise in the center.
Didactic farm, that was one of the main goals
Yes.
you like to reach.
Okay. So how are you going to have 1 million visitors in 1 year? This is an example.
Okay.
So the point of the question is to put yourself in a context to transform the question into an action plan. So it's not saying, is it feasible or not? Or you would say, how to have this farm to reach, I don't know, 10 million euros within 2 years. The question is how. It's not what and it's not why. So by using these type of questions at various scales, various workshops, you can push yourself in young people about the possibility of change. Because if your brain unlocks 10,000, they can unlock 100,000. But if you don't think about it this way, and you don't push them and push yourself, you're always going to be linear. And when a challenge comes, like a pandemic or lack of tourism or so on, you will find yourself stuck without any pathway for that. As you've seen, it's very simple. It's not rocket science, but it's really putting targets in questions. And you can also do like future scenarios. For example, you ask somebody like, how do you see the world in 50, 70 years? And then you give them like a challenge. Do not say it's impossible. And push yourself for the impossible and then phrase the impossible as how to. This is the best way we use for our programs to push young people in general to be able to unlock the untapped potential and unlearn some of the bad habits that we have all learned.
Yeah, you need to be careful because in 2015, when someone asked young people where they see themselves in 5 years, no one could have predicted 2020.
Yeah. Well, the point here is not where you see yourself, it's how you see the world. So it's really just to, because that's a very good point, because when people imagine the future, if the future changes, you have unlocked the skill of agility and flexibility. That's the point.
Okay, so thank you so much, Adnane, for your time and your answers. Thank you guys for your very interactive session. I'll meet you all like after 30 minutes because we're gonna have a break, and then like we're gonna have we're gonna start our 3:30. So well, after half an hour.
If you'd like to reach out to me, my contacts are available on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Please feel free to reach out.
This was my question, because I don't know if I will attend the second part. How I can get contacts from all of you, Joseph, Sona, Adnane, Abdejali.
Maybe you can write them on the chat. Maybe you can write them on the chat.
I've written you like the name of Adnane, like in his all like LinkedIn, maybe Facebook and everything, like that's his name. I've given you mine, like if you want to contact me, and maybe like we can write them all, so then you can take a screenshots, and then if everyone want to use anything.
Super, yeah. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.